I'm sure you're aware by now, but PlayStation is discontinuing physical games in 2028. This is a very disappointing thing as sent the entire internet into a spiral, which this is honestly very valid. Now, there's been a lot of misconceptions about what Nintendo has been doing. There's been a lot of talks of Nintendo's doing the exact same thing. Physical games don't exist in the big year 2026. That would be completely wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you. So let's imagine for a second that we're gonna go to GameStop or EB Games or whatever your closest game store is to buy a game. We're gonna buy one for each console, PlayStation, Xbox, and then Nintendo. Now Nintendo, there's two versions of games that we will be picking up. We'll be picking up one with a little key at the bottom, which is the game key card, and one with nothing at all. So go ahead and pick out your game. This could be Mario Kart World, physical game, or this could be something completely different. Now that we got all of our games, we bring them all back home and we'll realize something completely different. You're gonna take your PlayStation disc out of the box, put it in the PS5, and then start playing the game. But you'll realize something. You're not going to be able to start that game. In fact, you have to download the game. Yes, some of the data is on the disc, but you won't be able to play it immediately because it has to download it, copy it to the SD, and then you'll be able to play a couple hours later, depending on how fast your internet is. Same thing goes with Xbox. You take that game, you throw it in the console, and then it has to download the entire game. It doesn't matter if it's an Xbox Series X game. It doesn't matter if an Xbox 360 game. You will not be able to play the game immediately. It's not like if you were playing it on the original Xbox 360 where you go and get yourself the disc, you put it in the console, and then all of a sudden you can play immediately. Now with Nintendo on the other hand, this is something completely different. With the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 on pretty much every other Nintendo platform, you are able to take your game, immediately put it inside the console, and then start playing your game. You don't need a download, you don't need anything. You can be 20,000 feet underground and it'll still work, unless your Switch melted in fire. Or you can be without internet, random place in the bush. Your game is still going to work. Now, the game with the game key card on the other hand, that is a completely different story. That is very, very similar to the PlayStation and Xbox disc, where you have to download the entire game before you can play your game. So game keycards, there is no data on the actual cartridge. With actual cartridges, like the one without the key, the entire game is on that cartridge. That's why you can play the game without any internet. Now that that's all clear, one of the big things about 2028 being very scary, even though some of the physical discs already don't have necessarily any data on them, is because you won't be able to go to the store. You won't have that physical control over your game. You won't be able to sell them. You won't be able to do anything, and it's very disappointing. You'll be pretty much applying to the rules of a monopoly that Sony is going to cast upon you. There will be no other way to buy a specific game. Like for example, God of War, since they're going to be removing that from Steam. So there's going to be no other reasons to being able to buy this. You're going to have to buy it at the price that they set, and that's it. Before with physical games, there was always that sort of competition. You can get it cheaper buying it from the used market. You can get it on sale because there would be sales that stores would actually put out. Like if you looked at Amazon, you could oftentimes see discounted PlayStation games, even though there's not an actual discount on the PlayStation Store. But now if we look at it, that is going to be all completely gone. And maybe you're just saying discs are kind of useless anyways. Having a full digital library is the best thing possible. It's very convenient. It's on your account. You don't have to store any of the discs and stuff away. Well, that's completely okay for you. But what happens if your account gets banned or something? What happens if one day the company decides to get up and say, you know what? I don't want this game on the store anymore, so they remove it and you don't have that anymore. But if it's on the actual physical cartridge like Nintendo, even if Nintendo, or let's just go with Ubisoft, decides to get rid of Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battles or Sparks of Hope, they get rid of it because they still have to buy the license to use the IP of Mario, and they don't really feel like buying that license anymore. What's mostly going to happen is you're not going to be able to buy it on the store anymore. You won't ever be able to buy that game on the actual eShop anymore. but instead you will be able to buy it physical. That's why physical games actually exist, and it's a great reason to have physical media. But once this is gone, it's completely gone. It's kapoof. You're not going to have anything at all. So that's why the main audience of PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo are worried about the whole future of physical video games and video games as a whole. So now that we just explained everything, the reason why game keycards are here is for a couple reasons, in fact. You might be worried that your game keycard, Nintendo is turning into a whole Sony, PlayStation, whatever. The game isn't actually going to be on the actual disc anymore, the actual cartridge. Oh no, it's going to be doom and gloom from here. In fact, that's not what's happening. The reason why Nintendo introduced game keycards is because for those bigger file games, you won't be able to play them on the actual cartridge. For right now, the cartridge is about $20 a piece, so it's obviously cutting into the margins of the actual company. And what if the keycard doesn't actually support all that data? Like the physical cartridge doesn't support. It's only 64 gigabytes, so if you're playing Call of Duty over here, you're going to obviously need a bigger size. And what would you rather, having a game keycard or having to buy it digital? Because for me personally, I would love to have a game keycard over having to buy a digital thing that I don't have any control over. A game keycard is honestly something special. Then, if you're not a fan of the game, you can take your game and sell that game. If you want to lend it to a friend to try out your game to see if he likes it, well then you can share that game. There's no constraints whatsoever on being able to have this entire game. It pretty much is the entire game. Using it as a cartridge, you have to put your little key card in every time you play the game. It just doesn't have any of the file, and that's where one of the big problems come from. There's been a lot of worry about, well, the game's not actually in the file. What happens 20 years from now when the shop closes down? Exactly! What happens with your digital library when the shop closes down? This is something that you really look at. All your games are going to be disappearing. So this is why physical media is just something that needs to stay. Now for summary, if we look at all the different games, Nintendo games are actually on the cartridge. They're 100% there. You don't need any goofing around. It's simple, just like back in the day. You go to the store, you pick up your game, whatever it is, you put it in, you can immediately start playing. PlayStation, Xbox games. Part of the game is on there, but usually it's a 50-50 gamble, and most of them are gonna end up being like game keycards, where you can only play part of the game, a tiny little piece, and the rest is getting downloaded from the internet. And then the game keycard is none of those things. The entire thing is going to be downloaded from the internet, but at least you can play games that are 200 gigabytes, am I right? But overall, all these things aside is to say that Nintendo is probably going to be saving the gaming industry just like the 80s, because these games are actually on the cartridge. It's just your simple games. Like, it was honestly so right back in like 2006 with the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii, that you could just go to the store, pick up a game, put it in there. It's as simple as that. You don't need to have to download the entire game and things like that. But overall, what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope that you enjoyed. Consider that like button, maybe subscribing if you're new. We do a bunch of different Nintendo content on this channel. Consider to help me reach my goal of 5,000 subscribers before July. It's actually my birthday. Anyway, see you in the next one.